Okay, we're recording now.
Okay.
So this is our, what's that?
It's a good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Yes, good morning. We already had a little intro for those listening or watching. Yeah, I wanted to start just to acknowledge that this is our fourth session of four with regard to business planning for Woodbine Education Center, which is a nonprofit, and they're developing social enterprise revenue streams, earned income revenue streams for to offset some of the financial needs of the nonprofit. And we're still looking at wedding rentals and property rentals. Wedding venue rentals and property rentals is the two primary business models that are receiving focus this year. Yeah, and where we're at in the conversation right now is we've covered some of the basics of analyzing like the business models that were on the table and deciding which ones would be most viable in the current situation and which ones to investigate further. We explored using a business model canvas to map out some of the basic ideas of how the business model would work for these two businesses. We've done some financial work where we looked at just basic back of the napkin, what would be the revenues for this business model, what would be the costs to operate the business model, to generate kind of a rough cash flow sheet with some assessment around the profit margin, how profitable is this business model. And then we also discussed how to perform market research to actually hone the numbers that you're using in your financial model based on market data. And today we're going to close the four sessions by discussing adaptations to COVID-19 in these business models and looking at taking the next steps in terms of business plan and financial model development to create like a full set of startup documentation. And there's a few different ways to approach that. So we'll go over the possibilities and the templates that are out there. And then we will close just by reviewing where we are at. Liberty has been working on these materials, but also has requested more time between this session today and like a truly final session where she will be presenting the business model and some of this work that she'll be developing over the next few months for my review and to kind of round out the full sessions here with the story of how it all turned out in terms of business planning. So looking forward to that for sure. But yeah, today the goal is just to address any lingering questions about how to move forward, how to use these tools. If you did start using the tools and you have questions about what you're putting into the different templates, like we can talk about the contents as well. So yeah, that's, I think, a full summary of everything. Do you have anything to add to that, Liberty, or any more comments at this time?
No, just looking forward to kind of digging in.
Wonderful. Let's begin. So how do you feel about starting with the discussion on COVID-19 adaptations?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Awesome. So first I'll invite you to share anything if you have done any thinking about this on your own and with your team since we last spoke about it.
Yeah, we very tentatively have sort of been coming to the realization that operations for next year might continue to be greatly impacted. And as a lot of our revenue streams, these new models and existing ones sort of really are dependent on the ability to gather and be together. we're realizing the kind of great impact that this pandemic might have on us next year. We've sort of adapted to this year, but it looks like it might be continuing. So we've been sort of discussing the possibility of maybe putting our organization to sleep for a year to sort of wait out and not really to potentially not expend a bunch of resources that we're not really going to get a good return on. So that's a hard thing, and we're just sort of in the beginning stages of looking at it, but that might look like ceasing all operations and only employing perhaps one staff member or just a part-time staff member, and sort of just reserving our resources to sort of wait this pandemic out, looking at sort of the possibility that even operating at an adapted level might be just expending too much resources without enough income and resources coming back to us. So we're looking at that. But I'm also interested in sort of adapting what we could do to really sort of model out to see what truly is possible. Because that feels like maybe the very end of the spectrum of like what we could do to sort of survive this. And maybe there's some other more middle ground options that we could employ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for sharing all that.
Sure.
Yeah, a lot of difficult decisions are needing to be made for sure across many organizations. So if you do decide to sleep your operations for a year, I hope you're able to find solidarity with other organizations in a similar situation and connect on that level and commiserate at least, if not, build power because you're all in the same situation. And with regard to adapting what you're doing, that's the idea of like what I was hoping to talk about with you is to focus on how to model that. And I've been thinking about this topic with regard to Woodbine and your business models that you've proposed since we first started meeting. So I have some thoughts on some like brainstorming on pivots or similar but alternative business models adapted to the constraints of COVID-19 existence. So the way I wanted to start, and I'm happy to share my screen if that's helpful, just so you can see what I'm working from. Okay. So I always take notes when we're meeting as best I can, and I do that in suggesting mode to distinguish between what you say and what my template was, my agenda. So that's just what the green text is. But so the way I wanted to begin this conversation was to first identify the key factors in any COVID adaptation, like at the most general pattern level, like what has to happen to accommodate, the restrictions around COVID-19. And then from there, brainstorming specific business model adaptations, specific business activities. So let's start by identifying the key factors. What do we know about COVID-19 in terms of business regulations, restrictions, safety, insurance? Like, what do we already know? And just let's list some of that and identify some of those key factors.
Mm-hmm. Limited gatherings, limited number of people in gatherings. So I believe what we're currently hearing is no more than 10 inside. And I think it's possible to do up to 25 outside. There are some industries that seem to have different exceptions, like the restaurant industry and summer camps.
Mm-hmm.
it's unclear and possible that we just don't fit into some of those exceptions. So we would need to just go by the general regulations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. So some of the main factors are distance between people, total number of people in a space, in an indoor limited space,
Right.
in an indoor space, total number of people in an outdoor space. There may also be restrictions on, but that might be a little bit more flexible or hard to regulate because it's outdoors. And especially in your case, you have a variety of outdoor spaces around your property, so people can easily move in or out of them if it gets too crowded or whatever. So maybe total number of people in an outdoor space. What other regulations? There would be mask wearing.
Yeah.
There would be sanitation protocols, I'm
Right.
sure.
I don't know. I don't know if there's any say regulations about this, but a consideration is the ventilation, particularly inside spaces.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's a new yoga studio that you may be familiar with that took over the old Kindness space in Capitol Hill, Courageous Yoga. And apparently my friend went to class there when they opened, and there was like probably only 10 people, like a limited number of people filling the space. And then they also had all the windows open. So yeah, I think the ventilation factor was one of the ways that they're protecting people there. So yeah, open windows, open doors, that could be a protective factor.
Also, another potential factor is the sort of screening process that different organizations are implementing.
Screening for?
Yeah, like what I'm seeing is like protocols sort of ranging from just answering a questionnaire before coming, or answering a couple of questions before entering a building, to like temperature checks, all the way up to like with some airlines and international travel, like proving that you've had a COVID test and that you have come out negative.
Yeah. And one of the things that's coming up for me is like the matter of insurance. So to operate any of the businesses that we've been discussing, wedding rentals or wedding venue rentals or property rentals, both of those business models would require insurance of some kind. And insurance under COVID might be a bit of an extreme debacle. Like it may be very, very expensive, or the insurance company may have a lot of its own regulations for how you're supposed to be doing business in order to protect themselves. So that's something that I think deserves some research, because and research can literally be calling up insurance companies and saying, this is what I need for my business. Like, what quote would you give me for that? What price would you put on that? And usually they'll turn quotes around in 24 or 48 hours. So you can really get a sense of what the actual cost would be. And that could be, just finding out that information might really inform your decision about moving forward this coming year or pausing for a year, because it may be infeasible to pay those prices with the revenues that you'll be making. But let's say that insurance comes out okay, like you do have insurance, it's within a reasonable price, and so now what you're wanting to do is really focus on maximizing profitability within the framework of managing risk, right? So maximizing profitability in this context shouldn't have to do with how many people are physically there, because that's a risk, right? That's a risk you're trying to manage. So looking at models where small number of people or even just individual customers like are the target for the services, and or maybe contracting with companies that host gatherings, but that those companies as service providers are assuming the insurance risk of that. And so you're just renting to this entity who is going to be using the land under a certain agreement. So those are the two things that come to mind for me as far as managing risk and maximizing revenue in that context. And so a couple of the ideas that have come up for me, number one, and this one's kind of urgent, is the challenges that so many families are facing right now around what to do with sending their kids back to school. It's a really dangerous situation for families to, make the choice to have to send children back to school in the midst of a pandemic that's killing hundreds of thousands of Americans. So so a lot of parents are busy right now trying to come up with solutions, find what are they gonna do. And so in that environment, there may be schools learning pods, or kind of micro ad hoc schools, home schools, unschools, various structures that are going to pop up all over the place, that may or may not be regulated, that may or may not be fully incorporated and insured. So that's something to look into when you're in touch with these folks. But they may have a need for regular space rental and specifically going outdoors with their students. So the outdoor learning aspect, the outdoor school aspect of Woodbine's facility could be something that really gets maximized. Now, to take advantage of this opportunity, you're going to have to do a lot of marketing and outreach of this opportunity that your facility presents to these target audiences. And that may be challenging because they're kind of emergent and it's all chaotic in that space right now. But maybe the best way would be to put some feelers out in Facebook groups or family-based, moms groups or whatever, where these discussions are happening and formalizing. I know that the Front Range Mutual Aid Network is engaged in organizing learning pods. So reach out to them maybe and just kind of have some conversations and see if there's interest. And if there is, that might be something to investigate a little further. But again, if you're minimizing your risk, you would want the companies providing schooling services to have their own insurance and to have their own protections. And that may or may not be the case given the kind of emergent environment here. And within that context, again, it's you may be really wanting to charge low prices to these, small, minimally resourced family learning pods. But then, of course, you might end up not being able to charge the price point that makes it worthwhile, makes it profitable for you. So just some more investigation obviously would be needed of that opportunity. Yeah. I just read a newsletter the other day of the Shambhala Pittsburgh Center in Pittsburgh, PA, which I still am on the mailing list of because I used to live there, that they have made an agreement with an alternative, a charter school that is looking at going back to school in a socially distanced way, and they've rented their facility basically. So literally half of their operating expenses now are going to be covered by the school, and the school has primary access to their building and their yard for every single weekday, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. But then the Shambhala Center has it in the evenings and the weekends. And they're just this is so great because these children need a place to go and be safe, but also it's revenue for us. So and it clearly is a huge amount of revenue. It's making a huge difference in that organization to have struck up this partnership. So it's possible that something like that exists where, in lieu of going to public schools, where it's these large facilities, where are these kids going to go? So having some outdoor outlet that's on a regular basis might be a boon. Yeah. Investigate.
I've for a long time now, beyond this pandemic, felt the Woodbine was a great location for a forest school,
Yeah.
um, which is like an outdoor only education model. um, and yeah, I have felt like Woodbine would be perfect for that. We have sort of an outdoor classroom already. We could certainly build some more, like some additional, sort of living classrooms. Um, so this might be a great opportunity to sort of, the need is much more urgent than before. So
Yes. That creates a new market that was not there last year.
yeah.
So it's definitely worth looking into that new market, and what their needs are and how to connect with them. In this case, you probably won't be able to offer any kind of like overnight stuff.
Hmm.
So the difference maybe would be, difference in a forest school would be that people are driving up and driving out, potentially all in separate cars, like every time. So that's just a factor to consider, like how to logistically manage that.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so anyway, that's one idea. The other idea puts a strong focus on individual customers of the facility and the land, as opposed to group rentals. And so this idea would be around using, and I know you have these like dormitory almost facilities, these like cabins that are on stilts that right outside the doors of your main building.
Hmm.
Um, and so the idea kind of came based around that as a facility, but you could pivot in a way to provide like artists and writers retreat space,
Hmm.
um, where I know that as dormitories they can house more than one person, but for COVID reasons, each of those buildings might just be one person, but it would be for an artist or a writer or some other kind of creator who wants space in the woods, wants private space, quiet space, isolated space, so that they can incubate one of their projects. And writers retreats, and even just like, oftentimes writers retreats are like, rent us by the day or by the week or by the month or whatever your situation is. But you could also think about taking this model and looking at marketing to individuals who work from home now all the time, and that's all they do. And invite them to rent for a day or two or three, to just get into a different context, to get somewhere else that's outdoors, where there's outdoor healing opportunities, to just be, to walk the land, etc. Um, because again, that's serving a little bit of an emergent need where there's people who weren't expecting to be stuck working at home all the time, um, for the next year or more. And so that could be a market for, um, if you just create some marketing materials, brochures, whatever, like to target people in that situation who are feeling really frustrated and stuck, and, you know, just kind of in a rut around that situation. That might be an opportunity.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Do you have any other thoughts of like potential business models that fit within the main factors to be considered for COVID? So individuals having space, large groups, et cetera. Do you have any other ideas for
Well,
for
I was sort of, I was as I was sort of working on the business model for our wedding,
Mhm.
sort of enterprise, I was thinking of, what could these sort of weddings look like in this age of this pandemic? And I was like thinking of a more like a very private elopement type, spaces, for, and, maybe recording ceremonies
Mm.
for later broadcasts with like family and friends.
Mhm.
um but like that kind of quiet, peaceful, they'd probably be very quick, since they wouldn't involve like a lot of food or guests and alcohol and,
Mhm.
rituals like dancing and cake cutting and things. So, Yeah, I'm just thinking we could probably maybe do a lot more volume than we could with the other model of having, many guests.
Mhm. I love that. That's a
Yeah.
great idea. That's a really great idea. And it's going to be really interesting how you market that, because it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of a distinct service than wedding venue
Mm-hmm.
rental. It's a distinct package of services to have it more of an elopement style wedding. So I love the idea,
Yeah.
and I'm really curious about how you could like present this into the market of people trying to get married in the next year, and see if there's any bites on that idea. I love it. Super cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, so for any of these ideas, it may be worthwhile to consult with a marketing consultant who can really help you reach your target audience in a quick turnaround kind of a way, because you potentially have great ideas to make good money, but particularly with the schooling piece, that's a little bit urgent, and if you don't reach them in the right time frame, you squander the opportunity until potentially even next year, which is not good. So yeah,
Mhm.
maybe worth putting some resources toward that. And we I think have a lot of good resources for that in our network. And if you want specific recommendations, I can provide some. But yeah, there's a lot of good people out in our networks for that.
Yeah.
Um,
I would like some, yeah, if you want to send
sure,
me some good potentials.
sure, yeah, um, cool. I will. I mean, the main person that I would send you to, who then would have, like, he would have a ton of referrals as well if you needed them, would be Deacon Rada, our friend who, yeah, who is just like the way he handles thinking about marketing and branding is just so efficient and effective. It's so powerful, and he tends to work with all variety of budgets. So just I think he would be really effective here. And like I know that his network is bigger than mine, so as far as like if he wasn't the right person to work with you, then he could refer you to somebody else who could help you. um,
Right.
so that would be my top referral. I'd say start there, and then that's probably a good resource right there. Cool. Okay, so we've got, let's see, some time left. Let's pivot to looking at some business model or business plan and financial model templates. So we can just go over this kind of briefly and then spend the most of the rest of the time on your Canvas or
Great.
your whatever you want to talk about. So we'll
Mm-hmm.
do screen share. Okay. Okay. So first let's look at business plan models. So there's several templates out there. If you just Google business plan template, you'll see a lot of different things. And there's no one size fits all either. Depending on your business model, you may want to remove or add sections. And that's just how it's always going to be. There's no perfect fit. But the basic purpose of a business plan is to communicate how you propose your business is going to work, including how it's going to be competitive, the markets that it's going to reach, and the problems it's going to solve for that market or the value proposition it's going to create. So that's, the audience for business plans is typically people looking to finance the business, investors, banks, any kind of, funding source. But you may find that it's relevant to your community, that it's relevant to your employees, or whoever might be involved in the business as well. So the executive summary is just the brief summary of all the information in the whole rest of the plan.
Mm-hmm.
This template, I like it because it uses problem opportunity. So you're naming the problem that your customers have, and then the opportunity to solve it for them. The unfair advantage is just like, why you, right? Why are you going to be the special company to solve this problem better than anyone else out there? So that could be just features that are distinctive about Woodbine. Maybe it's like the nonprofit angle, or the location, or something. Like, what gives you an advantage in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
Sales and marketing, so target markets, who are you trying to reach, and being specific about how you will. Competition section is about other businesses in the region providing similar services, and again, how you're going to get a leg up on them. So describing like what they're doing and how much business they're doing, and how you will overcome it in a summary kind of a way. So it's kind of repeating some of the unfair advantage piece. Business model, this is the how do you actually make revenue? So the business model canvas is great for this. You can also have visuals or workflow visuals here.
Mm-hmm.
Forecast is the financial projections, which we'll come back to later. Team, usually the document does have something about team, about governance. So a little bit about operations, like how will it work internally? There's usually at least like some sections around that.
Mm-hmm.
Status and milestones would be your timeline and what are you moving toward. This one's kind of concise, and it does brush over some of the things that you'll find in a more complex model. This document is from SCORE, which is like a lawyers group of pro bono lawyers that help start up small businesses. And they're a great resource if you want free consulting on your business model or your business plan or any of that. But I'm just showing you the table of contents here, so you can get a sense for the structure. First is executive summary again, because some people will just read the executive summary. So again, that's a 1 to 2 page narrative of all the other, summarizing all the information in the business plan. Company description worksheet, so that is what covers your team, your business name, everything like that. Products and services, it's where you describe the products or services you plan to deliver. And again, this is available online. You could just download it yourself and start filling it out yourself. The marketing plan, so using all this information about your strengths and weaknesses, your competitors, your target market. The marketing plan is, how you plan to actually reach out to strategically your market and how you plan to start making money. So that's a more complex product of a process. And that's, again, a good thing to get consulting support on. But yeah, and then there's operational plan, describing how the interior of the business works, management and organization. And so as you'll notice, pretty much all these templates, they end with startup expenses and capitalization and financial plan. So let's go over those models as well. And oftentimes those are things that get attached. They're not like in the plan, unless you like put the Excel sheet in the document, which totally works depending on your purposes. Okay, so the main 3 financial documents, and yes, there are more, and yes, you could and I would encourage you to, if you're curious, go online and try to find a pro forma template in Excel, like an Excel linked workbook. But the main 3 financial documents you really need, one of them is the one that we worked on last time, which is essentially reflective of your cash flow. Cash flow is, the flow of money in and out of your business over time. So in the cash flow sheet, you looked at revenue to be generated from customers. What will they be paying you? And then you looked at expenses. And then you compared money coming in to costs of operating, costs of goods sold, or in this case, costs of services delivered. And from that, you got a sense of the profitability of the operating business model once it was up and running. But most businesses are not profitable until their 2nd or 3rd, or sometimes even longer, year of business. And part of the reason for that is you have to invest a ton of money to start something that will eventually make money and return revenue to the business. And so that's where the sources and uses document comes in. Sources and uses. Let's see, I don't want to show that spreadsheet yet. So sources and uses is just, and these I'm showing some examples that are from a food cooperative, but the basic structure is you list where your startup capital sources are coming from. Maybe it's from internal monies that you're leveraging. Maybe it's from lenders, from investors, from your community donations, but where does the money come to start operations, startup? And then the sources, or I'm sorry, the uses are where that capital goes to start the business. So uses can be purchasing equipment, purchasing, hiring or contracting startup consulting, legal and insurance support. Actually, insurance is more of an operational cost, so we'll set that aside, but certainly legal support to incorporate would be considered a startup cost. Any paid employee labor that is happening before the business actually starts operating. So anything before the business opens its doors, so to speak, and starts operating would go in the uses category. So sources and uses just shows a basic balance sheet between what it will take. So in this case, it's capital intensive because it involves renovating a building and opening a retail food co-op, right? So lots of uses of startup capital here in this model. But yeah, the summary at the top is just total sources, total uses. Here's another template.
So just for clarity, sources and uses is really a worksheet for startup costs only.
Right. Okay. That's right. For startup costs only. Yes, you want to partition the operating costs from the costs to start it up and the capital required to start it up. Yep, so sources and uses is for startup. Cash flow is for month over month or year over year, cash moving through the business. And then the other key document is a balance sheet. The balance sheet gives you a one-page snapshot of the financial picture of the business. So it's used pretty frequently in a business to just monitor things. And so you may have seen this before and heard the formula, what is it? Assets plus liabilities equals equity. So there's really only three major categories of how resources or capital are reflected here. Assets, which is something that you own that has a positive net value. Liabilities, which is something that you owe or that you've expended money on. And equity is the balance of that. Equity is money that owners have invested into the business that, or lenders or whatever that's in the business and is being held in the business. So it's actually assets plus liabilities should equal equity. Or assets plus equity should equal liability. Sorry, I said that wrong the first time. So whatever the figure is for your total assets plus whatever the figure is for your equity should totally 100% balance out with your liabilities at any given time.
Right.
So liabilities, again, is like what you owe. So it should be, a totally even balance. There shouldn't be extra cash in it if you don't need it, and there shouldn't be extra liabilities, because then you're like in a bad situation with your business. You're going under if you can't meet the liabilities that your business has. So yeah, and this is another thing that we didn't really talk about too much, but there are some key financial ratios that reflect general business health, and it is different for every single industry. but like your profit margin, for example, is highly dependent on the industry. Nevertheless, you should try to you should identify what that ratio is, that percentage, and try to keep it in the right range as one of the controls or metrics that you're using in your business. Is like, you know, yeah, it's just one of those monitoring things, and the ratios are just useful to kind of gauge whether you're within a reasonable range. And some of these ratios, they are kind of general business principles, so you can like do a little research and just get a sense of, you know, what's a healthy debt ratio for my type of business or whatever. And then you can notice if yours is strongly divergent from that or whatever. And so yeah, ratios, this is also something that any savvy investor or lender is going to look at. You know, if you have a ratio that's too high, it could mean that your business is actually a lot riskier than you are acknowledging, for example. So yeah, so there's a lot of templates that are out there, and play around with it and find what works best for you. You know, and in some of these cases, like your assets are really held in ownership by Woodbine, but Woodbine being like a nonprofit, like a separate entity, it might be tricky to represent that here. But you would want to do that in some way. Anyway, that's pretty much it. I'm gonna stop sharing, and then yeah, so again, what we've been doing in terms of the order of operations in our sessions is going from the most immediate information needed to like the most furthest out, that once you get down the path, you would eventually need to address those. So the information is all here for you, but I know that you're maybe earlier in the path than you had expected to be right now. So right now it's just kind of informational.
So some of these financial docs, do you see these inside of a business plan?
Yeah, so the business plan and the pro forma, which is the name for the set of financial projections, includes sources and uses, includes balance sheet, cash flow, and a variety of other documents. Those two things are like this, they're always partnered, they're always paired. So you always have a business plan and some financial projections, and they can be separate. Like for me, they're always a Word document and like an Excel workbook, right? So they're not, but you can take key financial documents like your balance sheet, and you can certainly copy and paste it from the Excel into the document if you want like one consistent document. Oh, that reminds me. Sorry, let me share screen one more time. This is kind of the way that everything is going with like with video and with just animation and with things on the internet, right? But like, what if instead of a business plan document, you had a business plan slide deck? Same thing, you're conveying the same information just in a different format. And that might be more relevant to your context. So I just wanted to bring this up because it's like, yeah, traditionally you have a business document. And I'm just like, these days, you might as well have a business slide deck because it's the same information, and you're basically pitching to your lenders or your investors. And of course you can have both, right? You can use one to complement the other. But yeah, so there's templates for obviously business plan slide decks that are out there too, like this page right here. So I just wanted to mention that because it's similar to like how the business model canvas lets you get it all in one place quickly. A slide deck might be, or a pitch, right, where you're verbally explaining what your business is in a 5-minute or 10-minute presentation. That might be another tool, like a stepping stone to get you to the full document, which could be, you know, many, many pages. So
yeah. That reminds me of a question to ask you.
Yeah, and let's go into any questions now, or anything you want to cover with the rest of our time.
Great. So since we're sort of here, we're going to be, we're sort of creating a pitch packet, I've heard it called, sort of a call to funders. This is more in our nonprofit sort of revenue area. So we don't, our entity and what we're sort of dreaming that we're going to be doesn't really fit very well inside of current funding paradigm, like boxes. And so, you know, we're really close to some things, but we're like just like not quite that and not quite that. So we're intending to take that back into our hands and instead create sort of a call out to funders for the need to fund movement spaces like ours that are going to, you know, have this reach, and in this particular political climate, how relevant we are, and for really, you know, lip service to certain equity principles, like put that into action and fund a place like this. So
love that.
That's exciting for us. So it'll sort of be this packet and just a piece of who we are. So not a full business model, but like some type of reference to sort of how some of these visuals sort of look to me is sort of the main narrative of what we are, what we want to be, are sort of two sides to the same coin, which is our programs and our enterprises, sort of all working together to create the larger picture. So what do you think is going to be best to sort of include in a pitch that's really to maybe foundations or wealthy people who could give a major gift, and you know, just enough to let them know that we sort of have a successful model and that these things are, or that we will have you know, a healthy model of a variety of income streams.
So what I'm hearing is you want to explain or pitch that you are projecting business revenue streams that will be coming in the future. But I'm also hearing that the main thrust of the argument in the pitch deck or whatever is around equity and, like, you know, stepping up and call out, which I love that. It's like changing the conversation around what our priorities are and how we go about funding. So I'm hearing that those are two different things. And so I wouldn't want to, first of all, in any pitch, you want to be honest. Like, if you are only in a certain stage of business planning, you know, don't project like $1 million revenues, like whatever, like just really acknowledge where you're at and where your resources have allowed you to be at in the moment that you're pitching. So be honest is important. But then the other thing is, in terms of what I think foundations or angel donors of any kind are going to be looking for, there's two things that come to mind. One, at the high level, is metrics. What are you measuring? How are you defining success? What have you been measuring, and what success can you demonstrate? So prove it, right? Proving your value. And there's another way of doing that besides numbers, which is stories and testimonials. So getting influential, high-profile individuals to make testimonials about why they value Woodbine and what kinds of ways that they've used Woodbine. So I'd say not just like, I love Woodbine, but like, how have they used Woodbine and how has it benefited their praxis or whatever. So really connecting it to the programming piece. And then in terms of, you know, I think the other thing that they'll be looking for besides metrics and like really good stories is competence. And so talking about your team and talking about acknowledging some of the like frustrations and constraints inherent to the funding spaces that you've been involved in, and also to the like to being able to launch your business model ideas in the midst of COVID. Just being transparent about it, but also demonstrating that you've given strategic thoughtfulness to it too. You're like, well, based on this, we're going to do this. I think that's really important, that you can demonstrate like that you have kind of a strategic mind around approaching these problems, and that you're tenacious, that you're not giving up because this place is so, and what you're doing is so critical, that you're gonna, you know, that kind of that fighting spirit that we often associate with activism. I think there's a connection there to entrepreneurialism. Like entrepreneurs have to fight for what they believe in, and so there's a connection there to say like, you know, leadership, like I'm sticking with this, and we're gonna find solutions and look at us, you know, think critically about the situation that we're in and come up with creative solutions to the situation. That's another thing that they'll probably be looking for, to say, I have confidence in putting my money here because I can see the leadership on the team. I can see how they think about things.
Excellent. Yeah, those are really good points. Yeah. And just to sort of touch on really quick before we move on, what really excites me about this sort of possibility is it's just to mention, there's sort of been a shift in some circles from fundraising, which is more in line with like a capitalist economic system, and sort of shifting to more of an idea of wealth reclamation,
Yes,
which is
love that.
which is more in line with an anti-capitalist or solidarity economy way of thinking about economic systems. So wealth reclamation is sort of like these resources, financial or physical, have been extracted from communities, and so in order to be back in right relationship, the wealth needs to come back into, and the resources need to come back into these communities. So
Yeah. And so do you think you'll be able to make an argument that using that framing or presenting that framing in the pitch, or that you will have a distinctive spin on that? Or what are your thoughts on making the case for that? Are you actually planning to like make the case for that, or just kind of intersperse some ideas? Yeah.
It's a because as sort of forthright as we want to be, and sort of paradigm shifting.
Totally.
We want to do that, but we also need to be sort of palatable. So we are, I think, going to use some of that language in a way that I think we hope to be motivating to the audience of who we're trying to reach, and exciting for them.
Call to action kind of thing.
Yeah.
Nice. You know, and something that I've always like observed or thought about you and about the team at Woodbine is, maybe this word is like too strong or coming from like a capitalist framework, but like the word think tank comes up. Like I do think that you're really like trying to do innovative work in these fields. And so I wonder, and this isn't so much a business plan idea as like a strategic leverage idea, is can you present a thought leadership angle in the work that you do, like where you're not just a facility, you're not just a land, you know, you're not just a place, like you're also a convening of people that do really essential thought leadership work in these spaces of, you know, just decolonialism and anti-capitalism, and the restoration of communities, the restoration of indigenous power and patterning, and like all of it in that. And so I don't know if that's something that you've already been playing with, is like how to present Woodbine's voice as almost like an authoritative voice in some of these like idea spaces. But I see that wanting to happen, I guess is what I want to say. Like, could you actually like make that an actual like strategy for yourselves? Because I think it's already there, and maybe it's like underutilized. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, some of the kind of language that's and ideas that are like being pushed around right now are really about paradigms and shifting paradigms and being like a forward future thinking entity or agent to sort of turn the paradigm in directions that are healthier for our communities.
Yeah, and I think you could make that angle explicit, that you're not just working at piecemeal solutions or just to, get your financial picture good for the next year or 2 or 3. You're looking at transforming conditions for future generations, for the next generation, for your own generations. And so in that way, you're, even just in that framework, then you are anti-capitalist and decolonizing, like, because you're coming at this with just different priorities, different objectives. So I think it's great to push that edge with people of what you're acknowledging as having value, and this paradigm shifting idea, innovating. And there's a funny overlap with what capitalism does value, like innovating, this kind of entrepreneurial spirit of like, let's get creative, let's call in our community, forward future thinking. I wrote forward future thinking from what you just said, and like, like that's, you can present a strong brand with that being what you do in your communities, in your teams, that you're innovative. And so anyway, I think it's great. I hope that you can get a lot of traction by pushing that. You're not just a space, you're these thought leaders.
Yeah, because otherwise I'm not quite sure how to sort of, funders typically are very excited about us, but we're also very easily rejectable because if we don't fit inside of these particular guidelines and parameters, we might be one of the first ones off the table, even if the work that we're doing is very exciting to funders. So we're trying to sort of take that, acknowledge it, and shift it so that change the climate to sort of better suit our needs and the needs of others.
Yeah, that's powerful. And I think what you're asking for is for the people who are potential funders but who may have rejected you before to come to the table and dialogue with you, to say like, hey, we're a stakeholder in this. It doesn't matter that you didn't fund us. Actually, it does matter that you didn't fund us because you wanted to. So what happened? Like, let's actually address some of the structural barriers that may be in play here. And whenever there's an invitation, even a bold invitation to dialogue, like, that's transformative, because dialogue is what does transform systems. But many times it is blocked by structural power-based pathways. So a call out, that's really a call to like sit down and talk to us. Like, let's solve these problems together, is super powerful.
I agree.
Yeah, make them come to the table with you because they have a stake in what you're doing too. So, and vice versa. Yeah, very cool, and wish you a lot of success with that.
Thank you. Thank you.
For sure.
I think I might share my screen or you could look, I think you have access to it too.
Oh, yeah, let me see.
What I wanted to, what I was able to do some work on is our business model canvas.
You should be able to screen
Or,
share now.
okay. Hang on, because I'm using like a Chromebook, so it's oh, here we go. It's like the app version. Need a minute. Screen, got it. Okay. I think my Zoom might be in the way, so let me know what you're seeing.
Okay.
Okay. Can you see the business model
No,
canvas?
I'm just seeing that your video has frozen. It still looks the same as your face, but it's frozen.
Okay. Display over other apps. Okay. What do you see now? Same thing?
Yeah, same thing, unfortunately.
Oh, I see.
There we go.
Oh, okay. Can you see now?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, super. I'm going to zoom in a little so we can look at some of this. Okay, so the values proposition sort of just additional worksheet that you sent. Here, can you see okay? Let me see if I can zoom in more.
Yeah, a little bit more would be great.
Great.
Cool.
Okay, can you see value propositions?
Yep.
Okay, great. Sorry for all the technical. All right, so I was able to sort of really kind of hone in more from the sheet that you sent over. So I sort of came up with like a bulleted list of like, what are we or what can we offer? And then I came up with the statement that this is just for weddings, to provide nature-based ceremony and reception sites that are rustic, beautiful, and authentic at an affordable rate for people who are searching for venues that align with their values and budget adjacent to the Denver area.
Excellent. Great
And
work on this.
Yeah, I'm realizing the one kind of thing that I forgot that we can offer, maybe not during times of COVID, but is lodging. So like kind of a one-stop shop. I'll just write one-stop shop so I can remember. So I need to sort of add that in. And then let me move this over. So then I was able to sort of look more at customer relationships. And I'm just not sure if I'm getting this quite right, but like I think what this is looking for in customer relationships is sort of what modalities we anticipate communicating with like what do our customers need? Do you feel like I'm missing the mark on this, or? Down so you can see.
Yeah, thank you.
Oops, sorry. There we go. So what I came up with, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so talking about responsiveness of your staff to clients is one good way of thinking about the customer relationships. It's about what does the customer expect from us? And so there may be what may be helpful is to write this from the user's perspective, from the customer's perspective. So like describe from the point of view of a customer what the interactions are like. And another one that I think could be relevant here is to talk about Woodbine's connections to communities that the customers may value. And there may actually be a potential, this is actually going back to the value proposition piece, but there may be a potential to leverage your social capital, so to speak, with your communities, like to invite special guests into people's weddings. Of course, the wedding customers would have to request this, of course, but like if there was like speakers or poets or musicians that you can help facilitate connections with, and also if you can help facilitate things that, so you mentioned values alignment in the value proposition, and I also think like you could take that a step further and really differentiate yourself if you offered like custom ceremonies or custom like also ways of fundraising, or like attaching fundraising to your wedding, or like for causes and things like that. So just returning to that piece a little bit, I think Woodbine has a lot of social capital and also this like thought leadership. It's a type of capital, and so maybe that's one of the types of relationship as well and value that customers expect or could come to expect from Woodbine.
This sort of process did help me to think about how transparent, like I was thinking, what would it look like if we were really transparent and said, having a wedding at Woodbine is helping to fund Black and Indigenous movement spaces, or outdoor reconnection to land, or beginning right relationship to things. So
and I think incorporating people who represent your work into like the events, or into some kind of like some storytelling even, just and connecting that with the customer could be really powerful. So storytelling, or like actual people from your networks who are providing a service in the context of the wedding, a paid service, of course, not like that you're asking them to do it for free, but just like making the stronger linkages basically between Woodbine's social systems and its business offerings. No, so again, I think you got it in the relationship section. It's just that how the service provider communicates with the customer is only one type of relationship that the customer has to the company, right? So like, what about follow-up after the wedding, or what about during the wedding? Like what kinds of contacts, what kinds of structures, for example, if you have a contract with the customer, you would mention that here. But I think you're on the right track. You just have started the process with that.
Great. The other thing I just wanted to go over, can you still see my screen?
I still see the BMC mockup document. Great.
Yep. So if we could just look. So I did a little bit of work on customer segments, starting to think out, who are sort of our target audience.
The screen may be frozen again. I'm not seeing the customer segments on the screen. I'm still seeing the old screen with the customer relationships.
Okay. Yeah, I think my Zoom is being a little bit funny. I think I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay.
And maybe we could just talk it out.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So what we wrote for customer segments sort of identified 4 different areas. So customers that are looking for an outdoor, indoor, mountain wedding venue in
Okay.
nature.
Mm-hmm.
Customers who want a rustic and authentic setting.
Mm-hmm.
Customers who have values alignment, who want to have values alignment with their vendors.
Mm-hmm.
And customers who need an affordable and sort of DIY compatible venue. So that was sort of another language and sort of service that I was realizing that we can offer, is just sort of being compatible with people who want to sort of, or need to sort of cater their own wedding, decorate their own wedding, do things sort of their own way. So some venues are not compatible with things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. These are all good differentiating factors. Like what makes Woodbine special to this market. That's great. And so the segments would be people looking for these specific
Mm-hmm.
things. That's fantastic.
So,
The DIY one seems to point really well to the elopement idea that you mentioned earlier.
mm-hmm.
Catering to people who, are looking to like do it quick and dirty and do it in their own way, without a lot of overhead from the venue company. Yeah.
Right.
So talking to a marketing consultant could help you consider the factors in even more depth around which of these segments do you want to focus your resources
Mm-hmm.
on attracting them to you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's possible to run simultaneous strategies for very different segments, but it's a little unconventional. The reason is like those three or four segments that you listed in some ways are quite distinct from each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think best practices would point to like, it's good to hone in with a marketing consultant, like what is the most relevant market, at least at first, to target. And then if it fails, you can pivot. But, just based on what you listed, I would think that the most high paying clientele could be those who perceive Woodbine as like this rustic, not affordable venue, like a rustic, beautiful outdoors space.
Mm-hmm.
And if you cater to those clients, you might be able to charge a higher price point, which might be more relevant to your other purposes as an organization.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the values alignment is maybe in the middle, and the DIY, just looking for something cheap, is maybe on the low end of profitable. Now, of course, if you can turn those over more often and it costs less staff time and less effort, maybe it's more profitable that way. But you really want to pick one or the other, because it's hard to present yourself in all of the ways to everyone. You don't want to be everything to everyone, actually. You want to really
Right.
present a view of yourself that's like showing what you are best at, or showing a presentation that appeals to a certain market segment, and not mix your messages, basically. So you could appealing to the high-end clientele who want an outdoor wedding, you could still do that and like have the piece about this funds, nonprofit. You might be careful about your language there, right? But like, this funds social causes, and that could just be like a little bookmark, a little flag or something, a little note. It's not going to be the center of your value proposition the way it would be if
Mm-hmm.
you're targeting the
Mm-hmm.
values alignment based customers. So just it kind of informs how you structure your communications, your presentation, based on whatever market you choose. And it's not like randomly choosing a market. You do want to think about some critical factors, including which of these markets are underserved. Like, where is their frustration in these customer segments, because there's not enough good options for them. So that's just one of the considerations. But yeah, working with a marketing professional will help you hone in on those questions.
Yeah. Where I needed a little bit of help was in sort of thinking through the key activities section.
Mhm.
And I don't know, I was feeling like just a little dense. I think
Mhm.
what our key activity is providing venue. Or and what am I missing here? Because it seems to want to sort of go more in depth.
Yeah. So key activities, rather than saying provide venue, you would actually describe what it takes to deliver on your value proposition. So activities would be like fielding inquiries and like meeting with a client and doing a walkthrough with a client and like describe the procedure of an actual wedding, what
Right.
happens from the beginning to middle to end. Like, so describe the activities that the business engages in to deliver its work.
Okay. Okay, that's helpful.
Yeah.
That's really helpful. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Um, the rest, I think, I'm okay on. Sort of dug into our resources, um, thinking that what our resources are, what our key resources are, is this sort of 60-acre property that has maintained forest and riparian ecosystems. So that helped me sort of realize that like part of our resources is that we need to sort of keep those ecosystems happy, healthy,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
thriving, and keep our buildings and structures maintained,
Mm-hmm.
staff people,
Mm-hmm.
and then marketing materials and sort of the media and communication methods.
Mm-hmm.
Those are other resources.
Yeah. So you're totally on the right track with that. It's what costs resources, whether human or money or otherwise, to actually, make this happen. So you totally have
Mhm.
listed all of those. And the distribution channels one, I just wanted to mention it. It's throughout this document because it's more so oriented towards businesses providing products. In your case, people are coming to you. You're not distributing a product to the world. People
Mhm.
are literally driving up to Woodbine.
Mhm.
So distribution channels is not as relevant unless you're thinking about that as how you distribute your marketing, which is a
That
different
is,
thing. It's a different
yeah.
thing, but in this context, it's maybe more relevant to flesh out those ideas. Like, how do you disseminate marketing? Because that is what does go out and reach people, but then they come to you as far
Mhm.
as distribution. Yeah.
So what I put in sort of channels
Mm-hmm.
um, is like our website, our online marketing and
Yep.
outreach,
Yep.
word of mouth,
Mm-hmm.
um, and our sort of customer service through online, phone, text, and
Mm-hmm.
emails.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also put our marketing partners because I thought um, when I was working on the section around um, what is it, key partners,
Mm-hmm.
um, I realized that we could have like shared marketing opportunities um,
Mm-hmm.
with other entities. And so
Yeah.
under channels I went and put that
Mm-hmm.
like our marketing partners might be additional channels. So I took it to mean like how we were going to be communicating
Yeah.
to the world and sort of reaching our audience.
Yeah. Definitely. So yeah, you've got a great start here. When you get deeper into the marketing plan stuff, you will really flesh out your online marketing and outreach strategy. I agree that online is probably the most relevant um, strategy, but like, you know, Facebook targeted ads, or like what exactly are you going to be doing?
Mhm.
Because I love the language here. Through which channels do our customer segments want to be reached, right? So if
Mhm.
somebody's Google searching wedding venues near Denver, like you want to reach them where they're at. You want to find them that way and connect with them.
Right. That's nice.
So yeah, and there's so all I'm saying is like that one little bullet point will get a lot more fleshed out with time, but you're totally on the right track with these.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. That's kind of all that I was able to really share. I mean, actually, I could share a little bit on
Oh,
the
sorry, there's one more thing with channels that I think is pretty customary for a wedding rental industry would be brochures.
Mm,
PDF even, so you can send them in an email, but like also print brochures, because especially if you're going to be asking some of your nonprofit partners to be aware that you do weddings and to give referrals and to like pass that information along, they might find it helpful to have all the information concisely in a good looking brochure.
mm-hmm. Great. Yeah.
Sorry, continue. I just wanted to add that and then we can move on.
Oh, I was just I did a little bit more work on sort of our cost of goods sold worksheet. And I maybe something I could talk through with you is I got pretty stuck on our property leases business idea.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think partially because it's just very analogous, like it can take the shape of many different things, and I'm not sure
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
what the demand would be or what people are interested in.
Yeah.
So I started to try to break it out sort of into different types of um, services, I guess. So I thought what I started to flesh out was agricultural. Perhaps, let me see if I can share my screen again. Mm-mm-mm. Okay. Let me know if you can see that. The COGS mockup for property leases.
Nothing yet. It's still just the main video screen. But this is a document I have access to, right?
It is, yeah.
Oh, now I see it. Now it's
Okay.
cool. I
I
was just
think
going to bring it up on mine.
okay. It just takes a little bit. So if you can see, it might be a little bit small, but up here, starting to think about different styles. So I thought agricultural uses, storage uses, office, and forest.
Okay, cool.
And
That's
just
helpful.
starting to kind of think through these, but I'm a little lost. Maybe this is where some of the market research will be helpful, but
definitely, yeah. And because this is your first year, it might be a good idea to pick a lane, so to speak, like pick one thing you're going to be good at this first year.
Right.
And I know that your major like social web, your social network consists of folks in the nonprofit arena, and that specifically you had discussed wanting to connect with them about office space rental. And so that, I don't know, again, like I don't know if this is COVID adaptive. I don't know how relevant that is to people right now. But let's just say, for example, it is one of the quick and easy, well, it's somewhat involved, but it's very, very useful. One of the tools you can use to hone in on your understanding of a market is a market survey. So if you were planning to, for example, market through your existing network this opportunity to rent the property, and if that was like your first strategy was to actually build on existing relationships, then it's a great idea to create a little market survey that asks people about their rental needs, their office space rental needs, or I guess in theory, if they're people who are strongly connected with you, you could survey them about all sorts of things, and because they'll be patient enough to answer like a longer survey, and you could see if they actually maybe have some needs for being outdoors, or some event space, or some storage space that you weren't expecting, but that turns out to be a substantial enough need across the dozens of people you survey that you can actually say, oh, there's maybe a business here, you know. So yeah, there's various ways to structure that. I'm doing it with several clients right now. But basically you're asking them about like, what are their pain points? What are their needs for space rental, if any, and how much would they pay to have this pain point resolved? And then you use that information to kind of assess viability of the business, of moving forward with a certain revenue stream. So I would suggest that in this case, just because you already have discussed wanting to reach out to your existing networks, and they may be able to shine some light on the dimensions of this and the financials of this as well.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. Because I agree. I think it's a little bit, it's just too sort of unknown to really to dive into this any further without really knowing what these relationships are likely to look like.
Yeah. And you can also create your own wedding rentals survey, where you get a sense, you can directly glean a sense of like what people will pay for things. But again, that's not as relevant because it's not directly relevant to your existing networks. So I think that doing a market survey for property rentals would be much more worth your while, because you might find insights in there that actually are really informative for what you do with this opportunity.
Yeah, that's all. That's the kind of, those are the areas that I wanted to review.
Great, and I'm glad we did, and I'm excited to see how this evolves over time. And like, please do reach out when you're ready to share a more like full, like when you're ready to pitch or share a more full presentation, and I'm happy to be an audience for that. We can even invite others from within my networks, from within the Cooperative Conversations community, to attend that if you want additional eyes and ears on it. So
that would be great.
Sweet. Let's definitely do that. Just I know that timing is variable, so I feel like what would be best is if you just reach out to me within a week or two of when you want to do that, and we can organize it.
That sounds great. Sweet. Yeah, that sounds about what we'll need, just because not sure when some of these things will get completed. I also wanted to share with you that I think I'm going to take this model and also develop one more idea, which is our sort of plant nursery.
Cool.
Because it's potentially like an area that we can continue through the pandemic. I felt like, even though it might not be that much of a revenue source right away, we should probably start developing that a little bit more sooner than later. So hoping to kind of do 3 models.
Those are 3 really, really different business models and different markets. So you're biting off and chewing a lot there, but I think it's great that you're kind of pursuing a line of inquiry with all of these. Like, could this work? Would this work? So that's awesome. I do want to just comment that just about anything agricultural can be very risky, meaning low profitability likelihood. So I would really look critically at the market, and also what it will take to reach the market. This may involve more heavy distribution, heavy lifts on your part, and it may not be worth it at the end of the day. But it would be interesting to look at how that industry has been impacted by COVID. Are those businesses booming? Are they shutting down, which creates more space in the market for you? So when you do the business research, definitely look into those things, because COVID is making everything so it's disrupting so many industries that it's
Yeah.
good to get the latest information in each of these industries. So,
Yeah, I was able to do some sort of internet research on like COVID and the wedding industry.
Cool.
That's a very, yeah, it's extremely impactful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, very big changes that have been happening,
Mm-hmm.
but some cool adaptations for, yeah, some organizations.
Cool.
Cool. Well, I will be reaching out to you, I think, sometime in the next month, 2 months, 3 months,
Mm-hmm.
to look to sort of review some of these final plans.
Well, I'm super looking forward to it. It's been such a pleasure to work with you on this project. And it's, this is kind of a unique model that we went into this with like 4 hours of just like
Mm-hmm.
getting you on the track of doing your own business development work. So
Mm-hmm.
I hope this has been helpful to you. And I know that it might feel like I threw a bunch of information at you and it's kind of overwhelming to take it on your own. So if there is any other ways that I can support this process, I've performed a lot of different roles with co-op clients that I've worked with, from market surveys to like business documentation and whatnot. So if you feel like you're getting stuck and you need a push, you need some resources, definitely think of me as a resource, I hope. And I'm looking forward to keeping in touch about this. And I have some friends who are kind of program designers in like the outdoor retreat space
Mm-hmm.
or like education spaces. And so I'm hoping that we can come visit you at Woodbine at some point. I don't know if you're even
Great.
there
Yeah.
right now. Maybe you're just working from home, but
We actually, an interesting thing that we have coming up is in the months of August. This is sort of like the only activity that we've really like been able to like output. But for the month of August on Mondays, we're doing volunteer days. So
cool.
folks we will be there. We're doing really small groups. So 10
Nice.
10 folks or less, but you can kind of come and restore and spend some time on the land and help out with a couple of projects. We have some stuff going on in the forest and
Cool.
some like painting with one of our decks that needs some refinishing. So anyway, just little projects.
Cool.
Yeah.
How does one sign up for that or get more information?
So we have it's on our site. It's on the Education Center site, but not the Ecology Center site.
Uh-huh.
And then we have like a little registration form on Eventbrite. So if you type in woodbinevolunteer.eventbrite at .com,
Okay.
I think
Cool.
then it will take you right there.
Great. That way anybody listening can also sign up if they're interested. But also that includes me. So I'm going to look into this and talk to my friends who I would want to introduce to Woodbine and vice versa
Cool.
about setting something up for that. And will you be there most of those days?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the only one that I can't be there is the 10th, which is just one of the Mondays. So there's actually 5 Mondays in August.
Ooh.
So I'll be there the other 4.
Nice.
And then we also have a virtual gathering, community gathering coming up where we're going to do some fun stuff, like maybe get a reading on the future of Woodbine by some of our like divinity friends, and then also have some like recipe shares and body grounding shares, and it's like a quick hour and a half, just sort of get together, and a little fundraiser for us.
Cool. When is that?
That is August 15th.
Nice.
I would be happy to just send you like some flyers and a little blurb about the details and how to register for each of the things.
Great. I would love that.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This was a really great experience.
Great. Thank you. I'm glad it was useful. And yeah, looking forward to being in touch further.
Cool. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too. Bye for now.